Sounds good.
All right, Bills Mafia, you've waited long enough. I have with me one half of the Shout, a Buffalo football podcast, Ryan Talbot. Now, last season, we talked before the season began. We're doing that again, but last season, we tried to do a bye week with Ryan, but couldn't get that done. However, being the person that I am, I decided to give you a bi-week content as promised, which I did. And if it was too long, I apologize in advance. Anyways, that was last season. We're talking about this season now. So first of all, Ryan, I want to ask you, how are you doing today?
Hey, I'm doing great. Excited to talk some Bills football.
I've been looking forward to this for a while now. So before we get into the schedule, I wanted to get your take first on Jordan Poyer being let go by the Bills and heading to Miami. So, when you found out Jordan was leaving Buffalo, what was your take on that when you first heard Jordan was leaving Buffalo and he was gonna eventually be on another team not named the Bills?
I guess I would say it wasn't a great level of surprise because at that point in time, the Bills were really strapped in terms of their cap space. They had to free up money some way, somehow. And Jordan Poyer's contract, as was probably a little bit too much for the Bills to kind of pay him. And it's tough because he's been such a great player for the Bills since coming over to the team in 2017. I'm not sure if they went to him and said, "Hey, would you take a pay cut?" Obviously, he took a lesser deal or he took a very small contract from Miami to go play there with the Dolphins. He was flirting with joining Miami the previous season when he ultimately ended up re-signing with the Bills. He's from there. He has a home there. His wife is there. His child is there. It makes a lot of sense for him to be there at this point in time as well.
Yeah, I wasn't too I won't say I wasn't too pleased that that was going to happen because if that's what's going to be easier for Jordan, I say, you know what? Just go and do it. Just go and do it. If that's going to be easier for you, just go and do it. I would have loved to see Jordan back in a Bills uniform this upcoming season, but that's not the case. Also remember, last year it was also his seventh year. Well, actually, it was a seventh year for quite a few players, Micah Hyde and of course Tre'Davious White and Jordan Poyer as well, as I said. But the reason I wanted to open up with that was because I was curious on your take on it because I know I could probably listen to it on Shout a couple times and get the take that from you and Matt, but just overall I wanted to get the take and I was like, I wonder what Ryan has on Jordan going to Miami from Buffalo to Miami.
Yeah, it was just something where it made a lot of sense for him to go there. The no state income tax. So even though I believe it was like a 1 year, $2 million type of contract, he will see that he won't have to pay the state income tax. That will help out quite a bit. Make that $2 million go that much further. And then with Micah Hyde and Trey White, unfortunately, it just seems like it is a changing of the guard, so to speak, in Buffalo. I could see Micah Hyde coming back. Obviously, he said it's Buffalo or retirement. But with Trey White, two serious injuries back to back years, the Bills had to make that financial decision to clear up about $10 million in cap space in terms of what they just ended up getting here on June 2nd. So it was understandable, but these are the tough decisions that you have to make when you're a GM.
Yes, yes, and uh, I haven't really listened to a lot of Sean McDermott and Brandon Beane's press conferences, but based on what I've been listening to from what you and Matt have covered so far. We'll get into the OTAs in a little bit because I know you and Matt have covered
Mm.
that. But basically, they, as you said, they had to cut. They didn't necessarily have to cut Trey White, but because of the two serious injuries he had, they had to free up some. They had to free up some space, and unfortunately, that's what led to him getting the boot. And
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, those serious injuries, they take their toll on players. It makes it tougher, especially cornerback position when you're talking, the ACLs and the Achilles. Those type of injuries for cornerbacks are so tough. The backpedaling, the running step for step with receivers. It would have been great to see Trey White play his entire career in Buffalo. It would have been great to see Jordan Poyer play out the remainder of his career in Buffalo and retire. I think what he'll do is he'll play this one season in Miami. It sounds like that's pretty much what he has left in his mind is maybe 1, maybe 2 years at max left in terms of playing time, and then sign like a 1 day contract with the Bills, retire as a member of the Bills, because that's where all the great moments of his career thus far have occurred.
yes, yes. Now I don't want to talk too much about Damar Hamlin. Obviously, we know that going into last season, he was coming off of his stroke he had, or oh no, sorry. Oh crap, I forget.
Cardiac arrest.
Yeah, his cardiac arrest. There we go.
Hmm.
His cardiac arrest. I remember I came onto my podcast and I said, I'm still going to give you a show. I'm just not going to give you a Bill show because of the way the game ended. But anyways,
Yeah.
we'll get into this season in just a moment, but I did mention we're going to go to OTAs, and one of the big questions I had was who's going to be Josh Allen's number one? Because I came on to one of my shows here on Sports for Beginners, and I said, I honestly don't know. Because for the longest time, until Diggs got traded to Houston, we were saying Stephon might be the big guy. He might be the number one, and he was. So, Ryan, I want to know from you, with Diggs gone, who do you think Josh's number one target is going to be? Because I honestly don't know.
Yeah, if you're asking me right now, I would probably go with Dalton Kincaid. Year two, you saw him come on last season as a rookie, break a lot of records for tight end records, not just rookie tight end records, but tight end records for the Bills all time. In his first season, did a lot of things that were advanced for a rookie in terms of the route running that they asked him to do, intermediate deep parts of the field. I think you're going to see even more of that in year two. I think that he will be a guy that is a focal point of this offense. As for the wide receiver room, I think you're probably looking at Curtis Samuel being up there. I feel like he's someone that doesn't get talked about enough, but he has already played in this Joe Brady offense. I know he doesn't have the chemistry yet necessarily with Josh Allen as they haven't played together before, but he knows this system and that gives him a real heads up in terms of knowing where to be, knowing what exactly Joe Brady wants him to do. So I see him high up there, probably Khalil Shakir right after that. Shakir has been getting better and better year over year, training with Eric Moulds, former Bills legend. So I feel like he's ready to take that next step in his ascension. And you're going to have a lot of other guys filling in some of those targets. You're going to see lesser target shares for guys like MVS and some of these other receivers. Obviously, Keon Coleman is one that I haven't mentioned yet. Keon Coleman, he's going to be up there as well. I don't think he'll be up there in terms of Dalton Kincaid, Khalil Shakir, Curtis Samuel level, but he's going to be in that next tier down. Rookies are tough to gauge in terms of their production, how quickly they're going to produce from a high volume standpoint. I think he's going to be an asset in the red zone. I think he's going to get more and more involved as the year goes on. But this year, his rookie season, I see him being that middle tier in terms of targets. You'll see James Cook get a lot of targets as well. So I'm still rattling off so many guys that are going to be a part of this offense that, despite losing Stephon Diggs and Gabe Davis, it seems like it's a good problem to have in terms of the amount of wide receivers, tight ends, and running backs that can catch the ball.
Yes, yes. And you know what? When last season was starting, I listened to the Chris Berman pump up, and I just got so pumped up. I was like, yes, Chris, yes. I was like, yes, the Bills, like everybody in Canada and everywhere in Buffalo, New York, they all want the Bills to do the unthinkable and actually bring this town a title. They want them to bring this town a Super Bowl. They've pictured it so many times, winning the trophy, the parade, the hazy halos, winning like the victory cigars outside of City Hall in Niagara Square. So, I mean, I don't smoke, so I won't be doing any of that, but I mean, yeah, if you're a diehard Bills fan, obviously you're you're still wondering, when is it going to happen? When is the good times, like when are the good times going to come where we're going to look at our team and say, we finally did it. We finally brought home the championship. We brought home the Lombardi trophy. Who knows? For as long as Matt, you, and all the other people who cover the Bills, even myself, who's just starting out as a podcaster covering the Bills, maybe for as long as we have the podcast running, eventually during that tenure, we might see what we've been longing for all these years, even when I actually started becoming a Bills fan. So I was like, I mean, that was
Yeah,
during the Fitzpatrick era.
right. It's tough. I mean, this Bills roster has been good enough to win a Super Bowl the past few years. It's just about getting hot at the right time, which they did one year, but then they ran into a Chiefs team with the whole 13 seconds. I really feel like that was a great opportunity for the Bills that season had they gotten past KC to go all the way, win a Super Bowl. I know this team is being, I don't want to say slept on. They're still the favorite in the AFC or tied for the favorite in terms of betting odds. But it does feel like there's a lot of the national reporters maybe thinking the Bills are taking a step back this year. I think as long as they have Josh Allen, as long as they have this, all these weapons on offense, and I know there's no Stephon Diggs, and Diggs has been great for this offense. I still think the offense is going to be top 5 in the NFL. Defense, though, is going to have a lot of new faces that they're going to have to step up and really help contribute, especially on the back end at safety, where there's going to be some new faces. And you need more from up front as well from your pass rush.
You mentioned MVS, also known as former Chiefs opponent Marcus Valdes-Scantling, if I have that correct. And
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Mark, if I pronounced the name wrong, I apologize. But you mentioned NVS, as you call them, MVS. You mentioned him, and I'm like, so yes, you did hear about that signing, and I'm like, hmm, I don't know if I like that. I don't know if I like Scantling coming to Buffalo, despite the fact he's been on a team that even when they had Tyreek Hill, the Roadrunner, as they call him, when they had Tyreek Hill, even in that point when Buffalo faced the Chiefs, it was a it was a I don't want to say a do or die moment, but it was definitely tough to beat the Chiefs, even when Tyreek was still a Chief, and now he's a Dolphin. So, what was your vantage point on Marcus Valdes-Scantling coming to Buffalo when you heard the news?
Mm-hmm. So low risk, high reward. I mean, it's not a massive contract. It's something that they can move on from very easily after, with this season. It's just kind of a 1 year deal essentially to see what he can do in this offense. And he hit it off with Josh Allen. They have dinner together. They hit it off. That's a good sign. I don't expect a high volume for MVS, but I think he's going to be a field stretcher. He has that speed down the field. He can make those big plays for you. And unfortunately for him, the hands have been an issue, and it's kind of like a faster Gabe Davis in terms of they both have those drop issues. I'm not saying he's going to be as involved as Gabe Davis has been over the last few years. Gabe Davis would go a few games without any catches, then he'd come on for like 8 for 100 something. It was very odd. I don't think you're going to see like the ebbs and flows like that. I think you're going to see him at that 2, 3 reception mark per game. It's nothing that it's going to jump off the page now. Maybe he proves us all wrong and he jumps up the depth chart. I just think he's a little bit too far down there to be a massive contributor, but he can be a guy that can stretch the field for you, and they certainly need that.
Yes, yes, definitely. They definitely need guys that, as you said, can stretch the field down for you. So, and you also mentioned Dalton Kincaid. I'll tell you right now, when I first saw Dalton and he the way that he progressed in his rookie year, I was like, keep this guy around. This guy's been good. I'm like, keep this dude around however you can. Like, keep him around. He's been really, really good. And yes, those that are rookies, they're gonna have those injuries where they're gonna start feeling like, okay, so obviously I can't keep doing this anymore. I gotta try to do something different so that I don't injure myself. And honestly, I'll tell you right now, Ryan, um, the way I feel with Dalton Kincaid, I have a lot of respect for Dalton. I feel like he's gonna have a good year in year two, even after his rookie season. And honestly, I think with this new Bills core, or the newer the core gets, even if this year does not become the year we actually go for it and actually make it all the way, I'm not saying it's not, because I want to stay positive here, but I'm just saying, even if it doesn't end up happening this year, all I'm saying is I think Dalton Kincaid's going to be someone that you're going to have to try to keep around as best you can. And yes, money, I'm not going to say money is an issue, but you mentioned the cap space and you mentioned that they had to free up some cap space to get guys. So I guess I guess to put a bow on
Yeah,
it, what I'm saying is I really like Dalton Kincaid. I have great respect for him, and I think he's going to be really good over the course of his second year.
Yeah, and listen, he's going to be a big part of this offense, and he should only get better each year. The Bills have him on a cost-controlled contract for the next few years. They can always pick up the fifth-year option as well down the road if need be. But in terms of cap constraints, a lot of that had to do with them really kind of going all in a few seasons ago and signing Von Miller, thinking that he was the missing piece to this puzzle. You have that contract on the books. You had Stefon Diggs' contract on the books at that time. Josh Allen each year, now this year, really hitting a higher cap total, and Deion Dawkins. The list goes on and on. You're paying all these guys, and eventually it does kind of catch up to you. Now that they've moved on from some of those players, they're going to be in a much better cap space place next year. And then obviously, when it comes down the road, when Dalton Kincaid could eventually test free agency. I think the Bills would be in a good enough spot where they could give him a lucrative deal. So I'm not too worried about that.
No, no, I wouldn't be too worried about it either. I mean, when it comes down to if he does test free agency, I would wait to see where he would end up if he ends up getting picked up by another team in the NFL if he does test free agency. Um,
Yeah.
so
The
it's
only
gonna
other
be
thing I'd say
interesting.
about that, though, yeah, the only other thing I'd say about that is the Bills, a lot of the times, they lock these players up before they even pick up their fifth-year option, or they'll pick up the fifth-year option and then announce an extension shortly thereafter. So I wouldn't even if he continues to produce the way that he did his rookie season and then build off of that. I doubt he'll even get he'll even want to test free agency. He'll stay here for the long haul for his second deal and be one of the more higher end tight ends. But obviously, that's a few years down the road.
Yeah, that is a few years down the road. Speaking of that, so we did talk a little bit about the OTAs, and you mentioned Keon Coleman. You mentioned where you were at with him. I'm going to tell you right now, I haven't seen this
Mm-hmm.
dude in action, but when I saw the draft, the way that it was going, I was like, at first I looked at Brandon B when I saw the way the draft was going before we got this guy. I said, "What are you doing? You were making some trades to teams that have been thorns in Buffalo's side, especially the Chiefs." The Chiefs was the one I
Right.
was most concerned about because I was like, I don't know if I like that deal.
Mm-hmm.
So we're gonna have to see how
It's
those deals go down.
Yeah, I mean Xavier Worthy is going to be linked to the Bills for the foreseeable future because the Bills traded that pick to Kansas City, allowed him to pick him up, fastest 40-yard time in NFL history. You read everything about this. Is this the next Tyreek Hill for Andy Reid? Maybe he ends up being that way, and if so, the Bills will get criticized, and rightfully so. I think the Bills, though, and a lot of other teams for that matter, have questions about Xavier Worthy in terms of his frame. He's going to be playing at 170 some pounds, most likely. You take one or two big hits, and you might be injured on the sidelines. Along those lines, the speed is undeniable, but I do think there were some health concerns about Worthy due to his size.
Yes, and I agree with you. I think there are some health concerns, and that is where I look at it a lot. When I look at health concerns, I look at that a lot and I say, okay, so so if you get this guy, whether he's a draft pick or he's a guy that comes into the league with another team and decides, I don't really like where I am. Maybe I'm gonna go to Buffalo, maybe I'm gonna go to Pittsburgh and test out there. I look at it like, okay, so if you're Buffalo or Pittsburgh or Miami for that matter, and you know about this guy's health concerns, you're looking at it like, okay, so how cautious do we want to be if we somehow land this player in a deal? How cautious do we want to be about his health? Like, how many days off are we going to give him in practice? How many practice times are we going to give him? Are we going to make sure he gets his rest so that if he does make the actual roster, we know how to use him and utilize him in weeks prior in the season? So that's the way I look at it when I look
Yeah,
at health concerns.
guys like Worthy, right? When it comes to a guy like Worthy, you worry about the hamstring, you worry about just taking big hits in general. As for Keon Coleman, the big knock on him was his 40-yard dash time, but a lot of the most productive receivers in the NFL last season in terms of yards were not blazing fast. Tyreek Hill would be the only exception in the top 10. In fact, a lot of them were running 4.4s, 4.5s, and even a few in the 4.6s. So I think that Keon Coleman can develop into a very good receiver in this offense. I think there's going to be a decent volume of targets for him as in year one, and then that'll continue to get higher and higher in future years. And the nice thing about him is this is a young kid. He just turned 21. He was playing basketball and football for a time. Now his sole focus is football. I think that there's a lot of upside and potential when it comes to his game.
Okay, so before we get down to the season predictions, I just want to ask you, when you looked at the schedule, because I listened to Dion actually from Good
Mhm.
Morning Football and I saw what he had to say. So if you're a player, I know you're a broadcaster right now, but um if you're a player and you're on the Bills, the Steelers, the Dolphins, or whoever you were on, let's say you were in the players' point of view. When you look at the schedule when it
Mhm.
comes out, whether it's on your phone, like on the app, or posted on the NFL website or anything like that, what is the first thing you look for? Because I listened to Dion's response and he said, well, I obviously look at the holidays. So do you agree with that? Like, is that would that be the first thing that you would look at?
Yeah. Yeah, our if I was a player in this scenario, am I playing on Thanksgiving? Am I playing on Christmas, Black Friday? Does that mean less time away from my family on those days? Christmas when it falls on a weekend, fine, that's fair game. Wasn't a big fan of them doing it this year, considering it's falling on a Wednesday. So I'm sure the Bills kind of breathed a sigh of relief. After that, I'm probably looking at, am I playing any international games? Now the Bills knew going in, before it was even officially announced, they weren't going to be playing an international game this season based on the teams that were going to be the host teams. Just wasn't going to happen. And then finally, after that, I guess I would look at primetime games in terms of late night, national audience, all eyes on our team. But also, that leads to shorter rest usually the following week. And how does that affect me and our team and things like that? So that'd kind of be the order I would go in if I were a player.
Yes, yes. And you talked about the primetime games, and this is actually where we'll lead into
Mhm.
the I'll give my prediction of the Bills, and just a reminder to fans here, especially Bills Mafia, these are predictions ahead of the season. These are also predictions of the record for the Bills that could happen and may happen. We won't know until they actually start playing the
Yeah.
games what the record's going to be. So last year it was 11-6, and it was good enough to make the playoffs. So what intrigued me about this schedule was the fact that we were playing right after the home opener to kick off the season. What intrigued me was after the home opener against Arizona, we've got three primetime games in the same week. Okay, sorry, not the same week, but we've got three primetime games in in the span of a week, and we've got we've we've got quite a couple games.
Internet butcha.
Yes, it did. Yes, it did. All right. So we'll wait. Oh, there we go. The recording's back. There we go. So as I was saying before we got booted there for a second, as I was saying, I look at our schedule and I'm looking at it like, oh boy, three primetime games, right? Three primetime games right off the jump, right after the home open. There we go. Okay. Okay, hopefully we don't have any more interruptions.
It happens sometimes. I've been there.
Yes, okay. Okay. So okay, here we go. We're gonna try this. All right. So
Yeah.
so as I was saying, I look at the season and I say, holy moly. I look at the season and I go, holy moly. We've got we got so many games that the Bills can play in. We have so many games the Bills can play in. And you're just wondering like, whew, how long are they gonna play, especially prime time? Like we got the Steel, sorry, not Steelers. We got the Dolphins in Miami. week 2.
Mhm.
Then you got the Jaguars and then the Ravens at M&T Bank Stadium. And then we don't play another
Yeah.
primetime game until week 6. So if you're looking at that, Ryan, what do you think of the
Yeah.
primetime games after the game against Arizona?
Well, real quick with the Arizona. Real quick with that Arizona game, I wish that would have been a home game that came later in the year. You know, that's a dome team. That is a team that would have been very uncomfortable playing in Buffalo in December, January time. But the silver lining to getting Arizona in week 1, I guess, is maybe Kyler Murray and Marvin Harrison Jr. haven't built up that chemistry yet. So that'd be the silver lining there. And then after that, like you said, 3 straight weeks of primetime football. So you get Miami. Obviously, late game will be still be warm there, but you're not going to have to deal with the sun blaring down on you, and that's been the biggest issue when you're on the road in Miami early in the year. I think the Bills will take that all week long or all day long. They'll be very happy about that. You know, Miami every single year since or the last few years at least, they've been pretty hyped up in terms of is this the year they're going to win the division? Are they going to push the Bills? They obviously have a very talented receiving core. Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, Odell Beckham Jr., but I still have reservations about Tua in terms of what he can be. I know he's a very good quarterback as is, but I don't think the ceiling goes much higher than that. So the way the Bills have played them, I like the Bills' odds in that game. Then you go to Jacksonville. Jacksonville has been a real thorn in the side of the Bills as of late. We saw last year in London how that Jacksonville really was in control of that game for the most part. I know the Bills tried to made a push late. Jacksonville kind of dominated that game. I look at it as the Bills get a little bit of extra rest because that Miami game is a Thursday night matchup. Then you go into a Monday night game, so you get a lot of extra rest for this, a lot of time to prepare. So maybe that will help you get over the hump, so to speak, when it comes to defeating Jacksonville. And then Baltimore will be very tough. Lamar Jackson is a great uh, quarterback in terms of what he can do, the escapability, the running ability. He's not nearly as good of a passer as the Josh Allens, the Patrick Mahomes of the world, but he's a good passer at that. So that'll be tough. I obviously don't have them winning all 3 of those games, but I think they can win 2 of those primetime games for sure.
Yeah, I was going to go the same route because I figure Miami is going to be a tough one. Jacksonville, we saw what they did to Buffalo in London when they played Jacksonville in London. Obviously, this one's in Buffalo now, but and you're not playing now as like as early as you did last year. But as you said, we saw what Jacksonville did to Buffalo in London. And do I expect that to be the case when we play them as part of a doubleheader during Monday Night Football after what happens with Miami? No, I don't. I don't actually. I don't. Do I see the Bills winning? Heck, I would love it if they won. I would love it if they won that game. Miami's going to be a tough one, so that's iffy for me. Baltimore, that is a really good one. The Baltimore game is a really good one. So I'm going to
Mm-hmm.
be paying a lot of attention to that game because that's got guys like you said. Uh, yeah, Baltimore's quarterback that you mentioned for the Ravens. They've got a good core. The Ravens have a good core. But
Mm-hmm.
I mean, when you look at it, I think the Bills, I'd love it for them to go at least going into the bye. I would love it for them to go, you're not going to win all the games, but I would like for the Bills to go at least 9-3 heading into the bye. which
Mm-hmm.
might be a bit of a long shot, considering our bye is not till week 13.
Mm-hmm. And
So
there's some tough games in between, obviously.
yeah, there are definitely some tough games in between, as you were going to mention there, because prior to the bye, you've got Miami, which is the one in Buffalo. That's on week 9. That's a Sunday afternoon game. You've got
Mm-hmm.
at Indy on Sunday. And then right before the bye, you've got the team we've talked about a lot already, the Kansas City Chiefs. Now that one, I think Bills fans should be paying a lot of attention to because yes, this is a team that has been a thorn in Buffalo's side for a while, and every time the Bills have to play the Chiefs in the playoffs, it always ends in disappointment. So far as it's gone down the road in the times the Bills have played the Chiefs in the Mahomes era. So that I would
Yeah.
that I would think depending on where the Bills are in the standings, even if they're top of the AFC East, I don't expect that to be the case, but I would love it if it is. But I think Bills fans should be keeping an eye on that one. Like depending on where the Bills are in the standings, I think you need to keep an eye on the Kansas City Chiefs game because that could determine, especially if Kansas City is not having a good year, that could determine if Buffalo will
Mm-hmm.
be able to get away from the 13 seconds thing and start a new chapter with Kansas City, or